In this video, we're talking about the third part of 1.6, where we're going to use rational inequalities. So rational means fractions. So here's an example of a rational inequality. We're still going to use the same principle that we used before with the 0. So we're going to be looking at where this thing is positive or where it's negative. Now a fraction, you have positive over positive, of course that's a positive number. If you have a negative over negative, well, that's positive too, right? And then you have positive over negative, or you have negative over positive, and those will give you both negatives. So that's the idea. That's the things that we're looking for. We're going to do exactly the same way as we did in the last section when we were doing quadratics. So let's just do this sample problem here. You know that at positive 6, that's going to make the top equal to 0, right? But since I have less than or equal to 0, that's okay. I'm going to include that. That would give us a good answer. Now the bottom is at negative 3. Now, if I plug negative 3 into there, I get a 0 in the bottom. That's never okay. We never let the bottom be 0. So I'm going to have an open circle here. And maybe now you can see why I always look at, am I going to use it or not, and I make the circle and color it in or whatever, so that I don't lose track, because they're not always all the same. Alright, so now we'll just do like we did before and check these intervals, right? So pick a number less than negative 3. You can make it way less, like negative 10. Let's do negative 10. So when I put negative 10 in the top, I get negative 16. It doesn't matter what it is, it's just negative. And when I put negative 10 in the bottom, I get negative 7. So that's a negative. I've got a negative divided by a negative. That gives me a positive. Okay, now we want to look at the next interval, right? The middle interval. So take a number in between there. 0 works good. I like to use 0 when it occurs, when it's convenient. I get negative 6 over 3. That's a negative over a positive. That's a negative. Alright, let's look at this top interval here, from 6 to infinity. So pick a number bigger than 6, say like 10, and plug it in. 10 minus 6 is positive. 10 plus 3 is positive. I got positive divided by positive. That's a positive. Whoops. That's a positive. Alright, so okay, now go back and look. I want the negatives because it's less than or equal to 0. So I will include this middle interval as my answer. I don't include negative 3, so that's a round bracket. I do include 6, so that's a square bracket. And that is how I would write my answer for this problem. Alright, so here's a problem. We can look at 2x plus 5 divided by x plus 1 less than or equal to 1. So it's not 0. So we have to make it 0. Now this is the place where you are going to be so tempted to multiply both sides by x plus 1. Get it out of the denominator. But what is it we said back in the first video for 1.6? You can never multiply by a variable when you have an inequality, because you don't know whether it's positive or negative. And so you don't know whether you have to flip the inequality or not. So that's not an option. You cannot multiply by x plus 1 and clear that denominator. So we still have to get it equal to 0 though. So we're going to have to subtract a 1. So when I subtract a 1, I got my 0, but what I don't have is I don't have a single fraction where they're multiplied or divided together and I can multiply in negatives and positives, right? I don't have that anymore, so I have to get that back. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to get a common denominator. So the common denominator, you can see, is going to be x plus 1. So 1 is going to be equal to x plus 1 over x plus 1. Now don't forget to distribute this subtract to everything. So I have 2x plus 5 minus x minus 1 all over x plus 1. And when I combine those top numbers together, I get x plus 4 over x plus 1 less than or equal to 0. Okay, finally, I have it in the same form that I know what to do with it, right? Make my number line, I'm going to be at negative 4. Now, at negative 4, am I going to include that? Yes, because this is a less than or equal to, and the top would make it equal to, so I do want to include that. The bottom would be at negative 1, and I never include the one on the bottom. We can never let the bottom be 0. Look at my intervals. Negative infinity to negative 4. Let's choose negative 5. That would give me a negative over a negative, so that's a positive. Between negative 4 and negative 1, let's choose negative 3. When I put negative 3 in the top, I get a positive. In the bottom, I still get negative, so that would be a negative. Bigger than negative 1, say 0. I would get positive 4, positive 1. That's positive. So that would be a positive. Alright, I am looking for a less than, so I want where it's negative. That's going to be in this middle interval. My answer would be written as negative 4 up to negative 1. Don't include negative 1. And there's my answer. Okay, here's your quiz question for 1.6c. Write it down, figure it out, go and enter it into Canvas.